Hi friends, Krista here. Thank you so much for stopping by Books and Jams. Today I am going to be talking to you about the books that I read in December of 2023. I wrapped up the year reading a ton of Christmas books. I actually only have 3 to talk to you about that were not Christmas books, and the other 10 were all Christmassy. And a few of them I listened to on audio, and many of you know that my brother passed away towards the end of November. And so Christmas romances were really just a little bit of a way to escape, but unfortunately, I don't really remember much of what I read. So I'm going to talk about the ones I actually own and have with me, but the ones I listened to, I will give you like general feelings about them. I'm not going to go back and look up summaries and all that stuff. There were 10 of them and they all kind of blend together a little bit in my mind, which isn't great, but, and I have ranked the ones that I have here too. So I'll start from my least favorite up until my favorite of the ones that I read. But first of all, I have 3 books that were not Christmassy that I did read in December. The first one was my patron pick from November. At the end of November, one of my patrons picked Same Kind of Different as Me by Ron Hall and Denver Moore. This is a nonfiction memoir type of story about Ron and Denver and their friendship. And Ron Hall is a wealthy white guy and he and his wife begin serving at a homeless food service type of a thing for homeless men and women. And he meets Denver Moore there, and it's just the story of how these two men become different, how they learn from each other. It really was a very impactful story, challenging to kind of get outside of our comfort bubbles and to recognize that whether people's lives are the same or different from ours, they have something to teach us and something that we can learn from them and ways that we can enrich each other's lives. I just thought this was a really cool story of these 2 men and their friendship. And I always love when there are like actual pictures in there. I also just love the way Ron honors his wife in here, and he does not shy away from talking about some of the struggles that they had too, and some of his own personal struggles. He was not, he was just very open about his life and how he learned that he needed to change and some of his own biases and privileges, and how interacting with homeless people and learning their stories, in particular Denver, and becoming his friend, like that just changed him so much. And it just was a really cool story. So I'm so glad that I was recommended to read this book, and I'm so glad that I did. It was a nice difference from all the other things I read this month. I also read the Middle Grade March book club pick for the month of December, which was Ballet Shoes by Noel Stretfield. And this is famous to me because of its mention in You've Got Mail. It's where I first heard about this book. It's not one that I read when I was a kid. It was published in 1937 originally, so it is a bit of a classic, and it felt that way to me. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was my season of life right now or just this type of a book. I just didn't feel emotionally connected to it at all. It was a sweet book. There was some tender moments, but ultimately I just didn't care. So we follow this kind of mishmash of a family. There's this guy who travels a lot and collects artifacts and fossils in particular, and his housekeeper and niece tell him he needs to stop. The house is getting too full, but instead he brings home these 3 girls that have been found either abandoned or I don't remember exactly the story, but he brings these 3 girls home to be raised by his housekeeper and niece, and he goes off traveling again. And so we really are following these 3 young girls. Each of them is very distinct and very different and has their special, like their areas in which they excel. I wasn't drawn in by the sisterly bond. I wasn't drawn in by the story. It just felt cute and sweet. But that's it. I was ultimately kind of bored a lot of the time, and that's not how you want to feel when reading ever. I did not DNF it because we are going to be talking about this one, or we have already talked about it for our Middle Grade March book club. But yeah, I wanted to finish it for that reason alone. But I will not be keeping that one, and I won't be continuing with the rest of the series. There are other shoes books, like skating shoes, I know is one. I forget. Theater shoes, dancing shoes. Yeah, there are other books in this companion series, but I don't think they're going to be for me. The third book that I read that was not a Christmas book, I listened to on my drive home from New York after the Christmas holiday, and it was one of my anticipated reads from the year, and it's The Little Liar by Mitch Albom. I did not read other books by him. I never read Tuesdays with Morrie. I never read Five People You Meet in Heaven, but I know he writes these kind of gentle stories that are not specifically faith-based, I don't think, but just get into the heart of humanity, I think. And I think The Little Liar does that, but in a different format. I really enjoyed how different and unique this book was. The narrator of the story is Truth, which is fun for a book called The Little Liar. It's set during World War II, and we follow a young boy and a little bit of his family as well, who live in, I forget the name of their town, but it's a town where before World War II, it was mainly occupied by Jewish people, 50,000 something Jewish people. Anyways, we follow this little boy who, up until the beginning of our story, we kind of learn that he was known for telling the truth always. His grandfather and he had a really strong bond, and his grandfather really impressed upon him that telling the truth was so important. And so he did. He was very open, very honest, and it caused a little rift between him and his older brother, because his older brother kind of felt like the younger brother was this golden child and everybody loved him and hard to live up to. And so it was a little rift between them. But then the crux of the story comes when the Nazis invade this area, and Jewish people start to be rounded up and put into a ghetto, and then also shipped away on trains. Well, one of the Nazi officers learns of this boy, convinces him to lie, and the little boy, once he realizes that he lied because he thought he was telling the truth, it changes the trajectory of his future. So we follow him through the next few years, and also the older brother and the family who got sent away to Auschwitz. So it was a World War II historical novel, but the focus was really on four characters: the little boy who was a truth teller and then turned into a liar, the older brother, the girl that was their best friend when they were little and had a little mini kind of like childish love triangle, not really like in an awkward way, but that girl was a main part of the story as well. We learned about her throughout the time. And then that Nazi officer who convinced the little boy to lie. So the story kind of jumps around a little bit in time, but it's so interesting because it's like on January 4th, whatever year, this is what each of these four were doing, and their lives kind of weaving in and out and intersecting again and not. And it just was so interesting, the structure of how the story was told, and that Truth was the narrator. I gave it 5 stars. I really loved it. I really thought it was unique and impactful, and had a lot of things to think about in this little package of a book. It wasn't very long. So yeah, I loved The Little Liar. I loved Same Kind of Different as Me. I think I also gave that 5 stars, maybe 4. And then Ballet Shoes was just a 3, maybe 2.5 star read for me. And now we get on to our Christmas books. I've got a handful of them. I'm first going to just say, I just wrote down the title and author of the 4 that I listened to on audio. I listened to 2 that were Christian fiction Christmas stories, and then 2 that were not, but all 4 of these were very, very low on the spice factor. I think the 2 that I read that are not Christian were totally closed door. I think one of them, we got to the bedroom and then the door shut and we woke up the next morning. There was no graphic scenes in any of these, which is nice for a Christmas story. So I read The Mistletoe Countess by Pepper Basham. Really enjoyed this story. Couldn't tell you what it's about. Both that one and An Ivy Hill Christmas are set in the past. I don't know if it's Regency or Victorian. I'm not sure. But I really enjoyed The Mistletoe Countess and An Ivy Hill Christmas by Julie Klassen. I, again, don't remember it, but I did really enjoy it. Both of those are Christian fiction Christmas stories. Novellas, maybe they might be a little shorter. And then I read Single All the Way by Portia McIntosh. Could not tell you one thing about it, but I enjoyed it while I read it. And A Christmas Date by Camilla Isley. So those are the 4 that I listened to. And then starting from my least favorite to my favorite of the ones that I read that I own, Carols and Chaos by Cindy Yancey. I think I had higher hopes for this. in Carols and Chaos, we follow a lady's maid and a valet at a house party. They fall in love. I just felt like the romance didn't have any, there wasn't the chemistry that sometimes you can feel. I don't know, when you're reading a romance, it just felt empty to me. And I had to listen to the ending of this multiple times because I kept falling asleep. That's how little it was holding my attention. This one's only getting a 2.5 stars from me. And maybe I should just give it a 3 because it's probably a me problem and not a book problem, but I'm not keeping it on my shelves. I will probably never, I will never pick that one back up again. So it's kind of a bummer because I think I was hoping for it to be a little more exciting, but it definitely wasn't like the other two older, like Mistletoe Countess and Ivy Hill Christmas, I really enjoyed. And this one I just didn't enjoy. So then we have Debbie Macomber, The Perfect Christmas. This was a really sweet story. I am giving this one 3 stars. This actually had like a short novel and then even a shorter little novella short story at the back. So it's actually 2 stories in here. I really liked the first one. The second one was sweet, but it was not as enjoyable to me as the first one. The first one involved a woman named Cassie who is just kind of down on her luck. She's really eager to meet kind of her perfect match and isn't working out for her. She's gone on blind dates. She's gone on online sites. And then her friends convince her to try this matchmaking service, which was super expensive, like $30,000. Is that a thing? Like, that sounds like so much money. It felt ridiculously overpriced to me. I don't know. It took me out of the store. I'm like, are you kidding me? Anyways, it's just a romance as she tries to find her perfect match. It was a cute story, nothing groundbreaking. And then the second story in here is about a group of people who are all getting onto this train to go home to different places, to get to an airport to fly home for Christmas. But the train, there's a huge storm. So flights are changed and canceled and delays. They are slowed down on the tracks, and then there's a problem on the track. They end up getting stranded on Christmas Eve in a train station, and they are all super grumpy about it. But then different things happen that kind of changes their mind, and they kind of become friends, and the Christmas spirit infects everybody. It was just a really sweet little stuck in a train station, kind of a Christmas contemporary story. I actually, now that I think about it, I did really like that little story. It was cute. Then I have my Patreon book club book for the month, will be my next favorite. I'm giving this 3.5 stars probably. Once Upon a Dickens Christmas by Michelle Greep. And this has 3 short stories in it. Look at me trying to reach my short story goal at the end of the year. Wasn't even going to get close to 75, but I did read a bunch in December. I enjoyed aspects of this. I loved the whole focus on everybody getting a second chance. I loved that there was no insta-love, that each of the 3 couples in the 3 stories had some backstory to their relationship. And I liked that. I found them enjoyable to read while I was reading it. But again, ultimately a little forgetful. I had to look a lot of stuff up in order to have our Patreon book club discussion about this. I liked that Charles Dickens had a cameo or was referenced in each of the 3 stories. So real quickly, the first story is 12 Days in Bleakley Manor, and it's a bit of a mystery. It had some quirky characters and was really fun. The second story was A Tale of Two Hearts, and we have a fake marriage situation. A woman works at an inn, her father's inn, and one of the guys that frequents the inn needs her to pretend to be his wife so that he can try to get his uncle's inheritance. Romance ensues. And then the third one is kind of a north and south type of story where this woman's husband passes away, leaves her a lot of money. He was abusive and horrible. She decides she's going to take some of that money to go. She sells off most of his holdings, but one of them is this old lace workshop, and in a town up north, and she travels there, and turns out the one that got away, like her ex, is the man who runs this lace shop. She did not know that ahead of time, and she is a shareholder in the factory, and we learn about working conditions and how horrible they are. She is really strikes up a friendship with these 3 or 4 blind women in the town and wants to try to help them and try to improve conditions as a whole in the lace shop. But also we have this old flame that's there as well that kind of gets reignited. So all three stories were kind of lovely, but yeah, 3.5 stars is what I'm giving that one. Then we have Home Sweet Christmas, which I talked about in a vlog. This is by Susan Mallory. I did this at the beginning of December as a I started this at the beginning of December in a try a chapter video that I did with some of my Christmas reads, and then I read it and vlogged about it. So I've already talked about this one. And this one was probably the most Christmassy. Like there were so many Christmas activities and events, and I did enjoy that very much. One of the main-ish characters runs a wrapping paper store. And so there just was a lot of Christmassy aspects to this, which were pretty fun. I liked that one. Also 3.5 stars, I think. Then we have a short story that I read from O. Henry, which I've read many times, called The Gift of the Magi. It's just such a lovely story about a husband and wife who are down on their luck, and they each have to sacrifice to give their partner a gift for Christmas. And it's just the most sweet and tender and beautiful little Christmas story. I love it very much. And then my favorite Christmas read that I read this year was A Cross Country Christmas by Courtney Walsh. I can't wait to read more books from her because this was really, really lovely. There's a sister and the brother's best friend. They've known each other for a really long time. She had a crush on him when they were little. Something happened and she changed her feelings towards him. I guess he really embarrassed her in some way, and now they're adults and she needs a ride home for Christmas, and he is her way home. He had already planned on taking the scenic route, and she is not very thrilled about it. So there's a bit of this bickering, like enemies to friends to lovers type of a thing. It just was a really fun story. It felt relatable. It felt like the enemies to lovers wasn't horrible. They weren't awful to each other. And it just was a really fun, enjoyable road trip, and I loved it. And I'm looking forward to more from Courtney Walsh. And that is it. Those are the books that I read in the month of December. Sorry I didn't have details about some of them, but that's just the way it was. I've never had a December where I read so many Christmas books all at once, but that's just what happened this year, and that's okay. I am looking forward to changing gears now and moving into a new year, switching things up, reading back to a little bit more normal for me. And I feel like these are going to skew my genre breakdowns, since so many of them are romance focused, but that's okay. It is what it is. I would love to hear from you. What was your favorite read from the month of December? And did you end the month on a high note or not? I would love to know. Oh, you know what? I have one more. Because I finished this at like 12:20 in the morning today. Today is January 1st when I'm filming this, and I read the majority of it during my New Year's Eve reading sprints. It's Love and Saffron by Kim Fay. This is a Christmas book exchange book, so that adds one more to my goal for the year from 2023. I'm counting it for 2023. It is a epistolary little novella about these two women who begin writing to each other. One of them is a little older, like in her 60s, I guess, and wrote an article that the younger girl, she's in her 20s, late 20s, she's read this article in this magazine or whatever for years and years, and finally decides to just thank this woman and write her a letter. And it begins a very special correspondence between the two. The younger is very interested in food from around the world and from different cultures. She lives in LA and has a lot of opportunity to explore different types of cuisine, and she's particularly interested in Mexican cuisine. And then the woman that she writes to lives in the Seattle area, an island, and doesn't have quite as broad of a spectrum of flavors and spices and cultures up there. It's very warm. It's very sweet. It was a lovely way to end my reading month. I'm giving it 5 stars. It was fantastic. There were a couple parts that I was like, wait, where are we going? What is going to happen here? That had me kind of a little bit on the edge of my seat. And then it just was very tender. And their friendship was really beautiful. And it's foodie. And it just was a delight. It was a delight of a book. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Maybe 4.5. No, I'm just going to go with it. I'm just going to give it 5 stars. I'm going to end the year with a 5-star read. It was delicious. And that is going to be it. I would love to chat with you down below. What was some of your favorite reads from the month of December? And how did you end the year? Do you feel like you're ending it well? Do you have anything you're carrying over into the new year? Did you read a ton of Christmas books like I do? Do you have recommendations for more Christmas books? Let's chat about all the things in the comments below. You guys know I love talking with you down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.